It started with a scream. Not a loud one, not the kind that tears through flesh and bone, but soft, short, and muffled, like someone who knew their pain didn't matter to anyone listening. I was walking the lower sector of Dorian Station, fixing a busted coolant pipe for creds barely worth a stale meal, when I heard it. It came from behind a supply crate near the waste funnel hatch. Most people would have ignored it. On this station, you learn to keep your eyes forward and your conscience silent if you want to live long. But I wasn't most people. I rounded the crate, wrench still in hand, expecting a rat or a drunk slumped against the wall. What I found instead was a kid, human, maybe 12, curled up in a ball, arms shaking, face bloody. Above him stood 2 Ravalik soldiers, lean and blue-scaled, all armored up like they were still on the front lines of some forgotten war. One of them held a shock baton. It was sparking. I didn't ask questions. I didn't count to 3. I just moved. The wrench cracked the first one across his jaw before he could blink. The second spun toward me, barking some alien curse, but by then I'd already dropped him with a shoulder to the gut and a boot to the knee. He screamed. His joint popped. I took the baton from his hand and held it to his throat. "You know what the rule is," I said, staring down at him. "You don't hurt humans. Not here. Not anymore." He blinked, confused. Then the recognition hit his face. He knew who I was. I was the reason that rule existed. The Terran Alliance hadn't meant to start the war. We were latecomers to the galactic stage, still finding our place. But the moment one of their slave ships took a human girl for processing, well, I made sure processing ended with the whole damn ship scattered across 10 systems. Since then, the rule had spread. The empires didn't love us. Most still saw us as primitive, aggressive, unpredictable. But they'd learned, through blood and broken treaties, that hurting a human wasn't worth the fallout. The last time a governor ordered a strike on a human colony, he lost 3 planets, a sun, and half his fleet in return. But not everyone learns fast, especially not grunts like these. I stood, grabbed the kid's hand, and pulled him to his feet. His lip was split. One eye was already swelling shut. I wrapped a piece of cloth from my tool belt around his hand. "Who are you?" he asked, voice small. "Just a guy with a wrench," I said, helping him walk. "That's enough sometimes." He looked back at the Ravalik soldiers. One was moaning, clutching his knee. The other was unconscious. "What'll happen to them?" he asked. "They'll be lucky if they make it off this station alive," I said. "Word gets out they touched a human, the locals'll do worse than I did." The kid didn't speak for a while after that. We walked the rusted corridors in silence, the hum of old wiring overhead, the smell of burnt coolant in the air. I dropped him off at the infirmary and paid the medic a week's worth of creds to patch him up and forget his face. I'd planned to go back to my shift after that, get back to work, mind my business. But when I got back to my corner of the station, 3 more humans were waiting for me. 2 men, 1 woman. They'd heard what I did. They wanted to talk, said there were more attacks, said the Ravalik were moving in again, bolder this time, smuggling weapons, threatening shopkeepers, scaring families. The peace, it seemed, was breaking, and I knew, deep in my gut, what that meant. They'd forgotten the rule, and I was going to remind them. They called themselves the Edgeborn, not officially, of course. No banner, no crest, no propaganda floating in comm channels. Just a whisper, passed from one dark corridor to the next, one forgotten outpost to another. Ex-Ravalik soldiers, black market traders, mercs who'd been banned from the core systems for breaking too many oaths. They lived for chaos, and they hated humans. The woman, tall, bone-thin, with burn scars trailing down one side of her neck, spoke first. "They took my brother," she said. "He went to the lower docks for a shipment pickup. Never came back. The Revelik said he never arrived, but we found his comlink in a trash bin. Blood on it. The guy next to her, broad, silent, fists clenched tight, nodded. He had the look of a man who'd already buried too many friends. He didn't need to speak. His silence screamed louder than words. "They're testing the limits," I said, "seeing how far they can push before someone pushes back." "Then maybe it's time we remind them what pushback looks like," she snapped. I didn't answer right away. The truth is, I'd spent the last 4 years trying not to be that guy anymore. The one who burned ships, shattered outposts, made children orphans in the name of justice. I thought if I laid low long enough, maybe the galaxy would forget. Maybe I would. But the galaxy doesn't forget. And now? Now it was coming back, dragging me with it. "You don't hurt humans," I said again, almost to myself this time. "That's the rule. And rules only mean something if they come with pain when you break them." We needed intel, evidence, proof that the Revelik were behind this and something worse, that they weren't just rogue soldiers but part of something bigger. So I went back to the undercrawl, the lowest decks of Dorian Station, where wiring hangs like vines and the air tastes like rust and old sweat. That's where I found Garrick. Garrick was Revelik, but not like the others. He defected during the war, turned against his own after he watched a battalion torch a village full of human kids. Never said it outright, but I knew it haunted him. "Can't keep coming here, human," he muttered, pulling a cracked data slate from his coat. "They see us talk. They'll think I'm feeding you." "You are," I said, taking the slate. "Who's moving shipments through Bay 9? He hesitated, scratched his neck with a trembling claw. "Edgeborne. At least 2 crews. Saw them unload crates last cycle. Heavy stuff. Weapons. Not for trade." "Human weapons?" He nodded slowly. "Why would they be using our gear?" "That's the part that stinks," Garrick said. "Not using them, framing us, painting up raids to look like humans or arming up for another war, trying to force Core to declare preemptive strike." My jaw clenched. So that was the game. "They want another war," I said, "and they want to make us look like the ones who started it." Garrick gave me a look I'd seen too often in my life. The look of someone who's already buried the truth so deep, even the truth doesn't want to come back up. "You going after them?" he asked. "I'm not here for war," I said. "I'm here to make a point." "Same thing," he muttered, before disappearing back into the shadows. I took the slate and uploaded it to the off-grid terminal in my quarters. Ship logs, supply manifests, patrol schedules. They weren't even trying to hide it. They thought no one would come looking. The next night, I suited up. Not in armor, not in tactical gear, just a coat, boots, and an old blaster I kept wrapped in cloth beneath my bunk. It still smelled of blood and dust. I walked into Bay 9 like I owned the place. That's how you do it. Confidence first, violence second. There were 4 of them. 2 Revelik, 1 insectoid trader from the Arthan Belt, and a big bastard with tusks and a plasma axe slung across his back. The crates were already open. Human rifles, ammunition, stamped with fake Terran militia marks. "You boys are playing with toys that don't belong to you," I said calmly. The one with tusks turned. "You got no idea who you're talking to, old man." I sighed. "I do. That's the sad part." Then I drew. My first shot clipped the tusker in the knee. Plasma axe dropped before he could swing it. The second Revelik lunged, screeching in his native tongue. I ducked under his claws and drove my shoulder into his ribs, then shoved him into the crate. He didn't get back up. The insectoid ran, smart. The last Revelik backed away, hands up, trembling. "You know the rule," I said, pressing the blaster to his chest. Say it. He swallowed. You don't hurt humans. I pulled the trigger. You follow that rule, I muttered, standing over his body. Or I hurt you. I left the bodies where they fell and took the crate's contents, marched them straight to the station overseer's office, dumped them on his desk. This is what's coming, I said, and if you let it happen, the next war won't start on some distant moon. It'll start here. He was an old bureaucrat, one of those hollow-eyed, protocol-first types who tried to pretend the universe wasn't burning around him. Your violence will only escalate things, he said. I walked out before he could respond. Word spread fast. Quarters I used to walk alone were suddenly watched. Locals who never made eye contact were nodding, whispering, offering food, intel, tools. Something primal was waking up on this station. The kind of thing the Corps tried to suppress in humans for decades. The thing that made them fear us in the first place. Not our strength, our loyalty. We didn't start fights. But we ended them, and we never left our own behind. And the Edgeborn, they weren't prepared for that. I sent a message that night. One signal. One phrase. You hurt one of us again. You won't be able to count the parts we tear you into. The next day, 2 more humans turned up, bruised and broken. One was the same medic I paid to fix that kid. The other was a janitor. Both found outside the Revelik Trader Hall. Message received. But I had a message too, and it was going to be written in blood. They left the medic's body in front of the clinic. That was the part that told me everything I needed to know. No message, no secrecy, no quick, clean kill to avoid attention. No, this was a public display, a warning, a mockery. She'd tried to help. Quiet, kind, never asked questions. The kind of person this galaxy chews up first. And now she was cold, bent wrong, face smashed in, chest caved. The janitor was still alive, but barely. When I found him in the shadows of the stairwell, his breathing was wet, like he was drowning in slow motion. I didn't say nothin', he whispered. Didn't talk, didn't look at him, just swept. I know, I said, pressing a strip of gauze to his ribs. You're gonna be all right. He wasn't. Not really. Maybe he'd live. But he'd never work again. He'd wake up every night for the rest of his life hearing boots behind him, fists, alien laughter. I carried him to the same infirmary, the same one that now smelled like death. The same hallway where the kid sat 2 days ago, wrapped in gauze, trying not to cry. Now the kid was standing near the door, staring at me. You're him, right? He asked. The one they talk about? The one who killed a whole outpost over one girl? I didn't answer. What could I say? He walked up to me. Are they gonna kill us all? No, I said, kneeling to his level. They're gonna try. His lip trembled, but he nodded like a soldier. I put a hand on his shoulder. They're scared, you know. That's why they do this. Cowards hit soft targets first. Then hit back, he said. I stood. I planned to. The station was divided now. Humans stayed in groups, moved together, eyes watchful, backs against walls. The others, Revelik, Arthan, and even some of the soft-skinned traders from the Quell systems, stayed silent, tense, like they knew a storm was coming but had no idea how to stop it. The overseer called me in again. You're inciting a riot, he said, pointing to a console full of complaints and surveillance feeds. They're inciting a war, I said, and you're too spineless to stop it. He leaned back in his chair. You're not law. You're not military. You're not even registered security. What are you? I'm the consequence, I said. Then I left. That night, I found their den. Bay 12th, empty storage unit on paper. But the records didn't match the heat scans. Someone had been storing a lot of living bodies in that space, bodies that didn't belong. I scouted first, 3 entrances, 1 main, 2 maintenance shafts. I took the back way, through ductwork so narrow I had to strip my coat and crawl on my belly, dragging my gear behind me like a rat. The walls sweated. My ribs screamed. But I kept moving. When I reached the grate, I saw them. 6 Revelik, 2 humans. The humans weren't captives. They were laughing, drinking. One of them had his boots up on a crate stamped with Earth's old Navy seal. Traitor. His name was Clark, I'd learn later. Used to be a supply runner for the border colonies. Got kicked out for running guns to pirates. They were planning something. Maps on the wall, star routes highlighted. One of them, Revelik with scarred mandibles, pointed at a location near Vega Outpost. "They'll think humans did it," he said in broken basic. "Same explosives, same trail." "And then Core intervenes," Clark added. "Cleans out the threat. Wipes the board." I didn't need to hear more. I dropped down behind them with my blade drawn, took the first one's spine before he could turn. The second screamed. I shot him through the neck. Chaos exploded. Blaster fire shredded crates. One Revelik lunged at me with a pipe, howling. I parried, drove the knife into his thigh, then twisted it upward into his gut. Clark pulled a pistol, cheap, shaky grip, and fired. Missed. I dove, grabbed his wrist and slammed it into the floor until the gun dropped. "Human," I said. "You sold out your own. Why?" He grinned, blood in his teeth. "They pay better than loyalty." I broke his jaw with one punch. The others tried to run. I didn't let them, not one. When the dust settled, the den was a morgue. I stood over Clark, tying him to a support beam with thermal cable. He'd live, barely. "You're gonna tell the whole station what you did?" I whispered in his ear. "You're gonna tell them how you helped frame your own kind, how you were bought. And if I don't, I'll leave you to the families of the ones they killed." He swallowed. That was enough. By morning, the news had spread. Some say I broadcasted it. I didn't need to. The walls here talk, even when you don't. Clark confessed. Everything. How they planned to stage a bombing on a human supply station. How they were building up fake militia movements to draw a retaliatory strike. How the Revelik commanders promised him a ship, a title, a life. Instead, he got a broken face and an exile order from every human enclave in the system. Nowhere to run. The overseer called me one last time. "This is over," he said. "Station's on lockdown. All Revelik have been confined to their sector." "They shouldn't be confined," I said. "They should be expelled. That's not how politics work." "That's why humans stopped playing politics," I said, walking away. Outside, people watched me differently. Not with fear, not even awe, but recognition. They'd seen death, betrayal, humiliation, but they'd also seen something else. Someone standing up, someone hitting back, a spark. And the Revelik? They weren't done. Number I'd made a statement. Now they would make theirs. I knew that look in their eyes. I'd seen it too many times across too many battlefields. This wasn't over. They hurt one of us. Now it was war. The first bomb didn't go off where they expected. It was meant to blow through the hydroponics sector, cut our food, cripple the lower decks, throw panic into the air systems. But someone tipped us off. Not officially, not through a channel. Just a scrap of paper slid under my door. "Check the fertilizer drums." Midnight. By the time I reached hydroponics, the room was empty except for the smell, sharp, metallic, wrong. I pried open the third drum. The wiring looked rushed. dirty, but deadly. I disarmed it in silence. Didn't call the overseer. Didn't raise alarms. Just took the device, wrapped it in canvas, and dragged it back to my quarters. They wanted fear. I'd give them something better. Exposure. By morning, the bomb was sitting in the central plaza, propped on a stand, wrapped in caution tape, with a handwritten sign. This was meant for us, not anymore. Humans gathered around it, quiet at first, then murmurs, then something more. Resolve. By afternoon, they were organizing, makeshift patrols, watch groups, not just men, mothers, teens, even one-legged old-timers who still remembered the first skirmishes. We didn't have weapons, not officially, but we had fury, and fury sharpens anything. The Revelik panicked. They held a meeting with the station's security head, an aging cyborg with more wires than spine, begged for intervention, claimed they were victims now, being unfairly targeted. He promised them peace, but I was already in the vents above the chamber, recording everything. I dropped the audio file into the station's public feed that night. The entire sector heard it. The Revelik commander bragging about corrective operations against human resistance threats. Their words, not mine. The next morning, Dorian Station was split in half. Security tried to create neutral zones. Too late. The humans were done negotiating. They came for me again. This time it wasn't subtle. No shadows, no ambushes. 4 Revelik, full armor, shock cannons. Broke down my door at 3 a.m. like they thought I'd be asleep. One kicked it open, the other tossed in a flash pellet. Thing is, I wasn't inside. I was 2 decks above, watching through a fiber feed, rifle in hand. I pulled the trigger. The first one dropped without a sound. Neck gone. The second turned, screamed, took cover. I moved before they could triangulate me. By the time the last 2 looked up, I was already at the ladder. I hit the deck like a ghost and moved fast. They hesitated. That was their mistake. A blade to the first, a blast to the third. The last one backed into a wall, weapon shaking. "You came to kill me?" I asked, walking slow, deliberate. "You think I'm the threat?" "You destabilize peace," he hissed. "There was no peace," I growled. "Just silence, and we're done being quiet." He swung his cannon. I ducked, drove my knee into his chest, then cracked his helmet against the floor until it split open like rotten fruit. My hands were bloody again. Felt too normal. Later, I met with the humans patrolling Sector B, what we started calling the Free Line. It wasn't official. No one claimed leadership. But when I spoke, they listened. "They're losing control," I told them. "That's why they're getting bold. Desperate dogs bite harder." "Then we bite first," one said. "Take the fight to them." "We're not terrorists," I said. "We're not killers." "You think they care?" she spat. "You saw the medic's face, the janitor. They won't stop." "They'll stop when they believe pain is permanent," I said. So we made a list. But their commanders, the smugglers, the collaborators? Fair game. We started slow. First, we shut down their supply route, rerouted power from their docking bay, corrupted their nav systems, jammed their trade signals. Ships left Dorian blind. No cargo came back. They blamed each other. That was the point. Then we took their quartermaster, a traitor human working with Edgeborne logistics. Caught him trying to smuggle disruptors under a crate of coolant cells. Left him bound to a wall in the center square, message carved on his vest. "You don't hurt humans, not unless you want to bleed." They bled. Not a war yet, but a reckoning. And still the core remained silent, cowards, watching from their towers, hoping the flames would die on their own. But we were past putting out fires. Now we were lighting them. 3 nights later, a boy was taken. 12 years old. Same kid from the alley. They grabbed him from a food line. Vanished before anyone noticed. I knew where they'd take him. The processing zone. It used to be a recycling bay before the Revelik commandeered it. Converted it into a black room. No cameras, no communications, just steel walls, blood drains, and secrets. I didn't wait for backup. Didn't ask for volunteers. I went in alone, wore no armor, just blades, rage, and the rule. The first 2 guards died before they could speak. I dragged one into the shadows, took his access band, and walked through the main door like I belonged. Inside, the smell was thick. Chemicals, piss, and something darker. The boy was chained to a chair, bruised, barely conscious. 3 Revelik surrounded him, one with a scanner, one with a scalpel. The third turned as I stepped in. "Unauthorized," he growled. I shot him through the eye. The others moved fast, but not fast enough. I ducked the scanner's beam, drove my knife into his leg, then twisted it until bone cracked. The scalpel wielder tried to flee. I tackled him, slammed his face into the wall until his blood painted it red. The boy coughed. "I knew you'd come." "Of course I did," I said, lifting him in my arms. "You're one of us." I left the corpses behind. Burned the room before I exited. No more black rooms, no more silence. Now it was official. The humans weren't victims. We were avengers. The flames ate the processing room like it was hungry for revenge. From the opposite deck, I watched the smoke curl through the vents, thick and dark, carrying the stench of burned lies and broken rituals. That room had been used for months, maybe years, and now it was ash. No screams, no alarms, just the fire speaking for all of us. I thought someone would try to stop me. They didn't. The people of Dorian Station were past that now. The lines had been drawn, not on maps or comm logs, but in blood, in bruises, in the silence of every human corpse the Revelik left behind thinking nobody would care. Well, they were wrong, and now they were terrified. I saw it in the way they moved through the corridors, faster, twitchier, always in pairs. I saw it in their barricades, hastily built outside the Revelik sectors, as if plywood and scrap metal could stop the wrath they'd earned. I saw it in the way their leaders stopped showing their faces. Cowards. We never hunted children, never touched civilians. But their commanders, their torturers, their backdoor traders and black market butchers, we hunted them like ghosts in the dark. A week passed. 7 days of shadow war. We hit them at choke points, supply crates sabotaged, energy feeds rerouted, false shipments loaded with EMP triggers. They hit back, but not with soldiers, with fear. 2 humans were found outside Airlock Delta, their bodies cold and swollen. No marks, no signs of struggle, just dumped like trash into vacuum. They made it look like an accident. But we knew. They were sending a message. So I sent one too. I tracked the airlock logs. The access came from a Revelik crew chief named Fralak, stationed in maintenance, responsible for external walks. He thought he was clever, erasing logs, jumping accounts, using proxies. But we were cleverer. He disappeared one night. Next morning, his severed hand was pinned to the airlock door with a spike. A sign carved above it in broken Revelik script, "No more airwalks. You breathe only because we let you." The message landed hard. Too hard. That same afternoon, a patrol of humans was ambushed. No warning. 4 killed, 2 taken. One came back, screaming. "They're done playing," he cried. "They're going to start wiping out entire quarters." That was the turning point. We couldn't just react anymore. We had to hit first, and hit loud. We planned it in the old freight terminal under Sector K, a graveyard of rusted ships and busted equipment. The smell of oil never left that place. We used to call it the cage. That's where the humans gathered now, ex-miners, old soldiers, street medics, dock rats, even smugglers who'd once scammed their own kind, now asking to help. There were no speeches, no flags, just targets. Revelik Command Hub, Sector D. Small, hidden, but critical. It controlled the encrypted comms between Revelik ships orbiting the station and the soldiers inside. Knock it out, and their coordination would die. We knew the risks, knew they had surveillance, sentries, maybe auto turrets. We didn't care. I volunteered to lead. No one argued. We moved under silence. 10 of us, each armed with blades, coils, scatter pistols. Tools from the bones of the station itself. No high-tech, no lasers, just steel and grit. We breached the vent shaft behind the hub at 0300 station time. No guards, no drones. That was our first warning. "This is wrong," whispered Keller, one of our scouts. I nodded. It smelled like bait, but we were too deep in to turn back. We split. 2 teams. I took the rear entrance. The moment we opened the hatch, alarms exploded. Turrets dropped from the ceiling, but they didn't fire. They scanned. And then a voice, booming through the chamber. "There you are. Thought you could sneak in like rodents?" It was live, a Revelik general, voice thick with contempt. "You've been killing our kind," he continued, "thinking yourselves heroes, but you forgot. We don't negotiate. We exterminate." I looked around. No targets in sight. Just walls. Hidden weapons. Lurking death. They had us. I raised my rifle. "Split! Get to the mainframe!" I barked. We ran. Gunfire rained down. Keller took a hit. Shoulder burst open. He screamed, kept running. 2 others dropped before reaching cover. I kicked through the side panel, fired a charge into the console. Sparks flew, the lights flickered. And suddenly, the voice cut. No more turrets, no more announcements, just silence again. We'd done it, but at a cost. Only 5 of us walked out. We buried Keller in the water treatment sector, by the broken pipe he used to fix when he wasn't scouting for us. No grave, just a scratched plate on the wall. He made them remember the rule. Word of the raid spread like wildfire. The Revelik hub was crippled, their ships lost contact, orders stopped. Movement froze. We expected them to retaliate immediately. But nothing came. Not for a day, not for 2. On the 3rd night, I sat in the old security hall, staring at the wall monitors, watching empty corridors. "Something's wrong," I muttered. "Maybe they're retreating," one of the medics said. "Maybe they're giving up." I shook my head. "Number, they're planning something big." And I was right. Just before dawn, the sky cracked. 3 Revelik cruisers broke through the clouds above Dorian Station. Bypassed protocol, bypassed orbital control. An invasion fleet. No more games, no more politics. They weren't trying to suppress us anymore. They were trying to erase us. The first blasts shook the station like thunder from inside the bones. Steel buckled. Lights flickered. Oxygen alarms howled like sirens mourning the dead before the killing had even begun. The Revelik had finally dropped the mask. No more back alley beatings. No more fake diplomacy. This was an all-out military strike. And we were outgunned. The cruisers outside the station unleashed orbital bursts, surgical strikes, meant to carve out human sectors and leave everything else untouched. The core would stay silent, as long as the Revelik pretended it was internal cleansing. They always used fancy words for genocide. I stood on the upper platform of Control Deck Theta, watching the screens light up red with damage logs. One after another, Power Grid C disabled, Airlock 7 breached, Medical Wing B gone. "Where's the evac order?" someone asked. "There is no evac," I said. "They don't want survivors. They want silence." There was no time for fear. I grabbed the intercom and broadcast my voice across every deck. "This is it," I said, calm but loud. "They've declared war. Not on soldiers, not on governments, on us. The unarmed, the workers, the children, the sick. They want to make an example of humanity." I paused. But they forgot who we are. We're not the easy kill they think we are. We don't run. We fight. For every name they wiped off this station, we will carve theirs into the walls. The line clicked off. Behind me, men and women scrambled, arming makeshift launchers, reprogramming drones, welding doors shut. Not a real army. Just desperate people with rage in their veins. And it would be enough. Sector F was hit next. That's where we held the wounded. The elders, the mothers with their babies. The place we'd marked with neutrality symbols, hoping even animals like the Revelik would honor it. They didn't. Their dropship tore through the ceiling like a claw. 20 armored Revelik disembarked, each one heavier than a man, plated in black alloy, carrying heat blades and scatter rifles. The hallway resistance lasted 30 seconds. I got there just as they dragged 3 survivors into the open. A woman screamed, her child snatched from her arms and thrown aside like a sack. She lunged. They shot her mid-step. That was the last mistake they ever made. 2 humans jumped from the vents, knives in hand, hitting them at the joints where armor was weakest. Another tossed a flash pod, blinding the group long enough for the others to swarm. We didn't fight like soldiers. We fought like the desperate, the damned. And it worked. By the end of the skirmish, all 20 were dead. But so were 9 of ours. One of them, a 17-year-old named Lyle, died cradling his little sister. Shielded her with his body. She lived. By now the Revelik knew this wouldn't be clean. The humans wouldn't roll over, wouldn't die quietly. So they turned brutal. They started using firebombs, low-yield, high-burn chemical charges. They dropped them in quarters with the highest civilian concentrations. They called them area denials. We called them massacres. I dragged bodies out of 3 separate fire sites, some charred beyond recognition. One mother held her baby so tightly in death that the flames couldn't separate them. And that's when I snapped. We gathered what we had, scrap rockets, modified loaders, hacked drones, and hit back. Not with guerrilla raids, not with sniping. We went for their command ship, Operation Emberline. We launched from the maintenance dock in a half-finished freighter, retrofitted with makeshift propulsion and reinforced plating. It shouldn't have flown. But it did. 6 of us boarded the Revelik cruiser under the radar, through a bypass in their docking logs, cloaked our heat signature. We only had 1 shot. The ship was a beast, long, sleek, a machine designed for planetary control. It had once burned cities from orbit. Now we were in its throat. We moved fast, cutting through the engineering decks, taking out guards in silence. We wore the faces of everyone they'd tried to erase. That made us dangerous. By the time we reached the core, alarms were already ringing. The AI screamed warnings in Revelik tongue. I planted the charges anyway. But one of them, Roan, stayed behind. "I'll hold the corridor," he said, pressing his hand to the detonator remote. "You go. Tell them we weren't afraid." I didn't argue. He was gone the moment I turned. We launched back with 2 minutes to spare. The explosion was visible from Dorian Station, like a new star blooming in orbit. The ship shattered. The screams of a dying fleet echoed through every channel. We'd destroyed their command. And in doing so, We'd shattered the illusion. Humans weren't victims anymore. We were vengeance. But even victory has a price. Their response was swift, cruel, final. They issued a global purge order. Every Revelik squad on Dorian Station was to kill on sight. No negotiations. No mercy. And still, we didn't break. They thought they could drown us in fear. But humans, we don't drown. We burn. The purge began with silence. No alarms, no announcements, just humans vanishing, one by one, an empty bunk, a half-finished meal, a cold trail of blood in a hallway no one dared to follow. We had lost over 200 in the first 8 hours, not in firefights, not in open combat. Executed, cornered in stairwells, suffocated in ventilation shafts, strangled in locked storage rooms. The Revelik were no longer pretending. They didn't come in uniform. They came in black armor with no insignia, no identity, like death with claws. And they didn't care if the humans were armed or not. Old men, pregnant women, kids, gone. We weren't soldiers, but we became hunters. Because the only way to stop a monster is to become one they fear. By the second day of the purge, Sector H was empty. Lights flickering. Doors sealed. The families who lived there, all gone. Some say they were dumped into space, their bodies scattered in the void where no one would ever find them. I didn't have time to grieve. Grief could come later. I was standing over a table littered with blueprints, scratch maps, and old maintenance schematics. Every breath I took felt like it was carrying the weight of 50 names I'd never get to say again. "Power's gone on Deck 6, Keller's brother Darren said. "Water filtration's failing on 3. If we don't secure that dock soon, we won't last another 2 days. "Then we don't wait 2 days, I said. "We hit now." He looked at me like I'd just asked him to walk into a furnace. "There's hundreds of them," he said. "Maybe more." "Good," I replied. "Then we'll finally know what they're hiding behind." We moved before dawn, what passed for it on Dorian Station. Just under 50 of us now. That's all we had. The rest were too wounded, too scattered, or already dead. We split into 4 units. Our target, Docking Bay Gamma. It was their stronghold now, their center of operation. They moved everything through it, supplies, reinforcements, and intel. You cut that off, you choke the whole beast. It was suicide. We didn't care. We crept through vent shafts and debris-choked access corridors. We disabled their motion sensors, overrode their camera feeds. By the time we reached the edge of the bay, I could hear them. Revelik voices, arguing. One of them was screaming. Not in pain, but rage. They weren't winning. That scared them. I peered through a shattered viewport. Dozens of Revelik soldiers, gear lined up, mechs charging. One commander pacing like a trapped animal. They were preparing something big. "Explosives," I whispered. "They're going to level this place." "What if there's civilians still inside?" someone whispered. "They don't care," I said. "We do." And that's why we'd win. We attacked from the vents. Keller's brother dropped the first charge into a fuel line. Fire ripped through the air before the Revelik could react. Smoke swallowed the front lines as we poured in from 3 sides. It wasn't war, it was butchery. I saw a mother who'd lost her child swing a hammer into a Revelik skull until it cracked like rotten wood. I saw a 16-year-old slam a spike through a soldier's throat, tears pouring down his face as he screamed every curse he knew. The Revelik fought hard. But they were too late. The last thing their commander saw was my face before I put a round between his eyes. "Tell your gods," I whispered. "Humans don't beg." The bay was ours, but what we found next nearly broke me. A door, just beyond the storage racks, half hidden beneath a fake wall. Inside it, cages. Dozens of them, packed with humans, bloody, starved, broken. Some were children. One woman clutched a cloth bundle that turned out to be her baby, dead for days, too precious for her to let go. This wasn't war. It never had been. This was extermination by attrition, a slow, quiet purge of an entire species. And we'd been too slow to stop most of it. But we could stop the rest. I stood on the balcony above what used to be a Revelik meeting hall. Now it was ours. Below me were the survivors, the fighters, the civilians, the orphans, the broken. I looked at them all and spoke the words they'd waited to hear. There is no core coming to save us. There is no mercy, no appeals, no surrender. I held up the weapon we'd taken from their commander, still stained with his blood. But we're still here. They didn't cheer, that wasn't the moment for it, but their eyes changed. They were done hoping. Now they were ready to finish it. Our final stand wasn't a fortress, it was a promise. The Revelik didn't expect us to strike again. They thought the purge had done its work, that we were broken, so we brought the fight to them. 3 units moved into the heart of Sector D, their last fortified post. Not with fire this time. With sabotage. We hacked their coolant system, overloaded their power grid, planted thermal cores along the corridor junctions. When they scrambled to fix the chaos, our teams slipped in and cut them down, one by one. Room by room, they fell. Their officers tried to negotiate. They offered us ships, credits, amnesties. I shot the first one who spoke. You had a rule, I told him as he bled out. You broke it. You're no better than us, he hissed, choking. No, I said, pressing his face into the floor. I'm worse. Because I remember every name you made me bury. The last fight lasted 16 minutes. At the end of it, the Revelik surrendered. Not to the core, not to the Alliance, to us, to the survivors they tried to erase. The cleanup took days. We burned their flags, dismantled their weapons, turned their quarters into medical bays. We gave the dead names, carved their stories into the steel. We made sure the galaxy would never forget what the Revelik did, what we did, how a handful of broken humans bled monsters from orbit and made the stars remember one truth. You don't hurt humans. Victory is a strange thing. It doesn't feel like a parade or a cheer. It feels like silence. Like sitting in a room that used to echo with screams and hearing nothing but your own breath. That's what Dorian Station became after the purge ended. Not a city, not a battlefield, just a tomb full of ghosts and survivors who weren't sure which they were yet. We'd won. But I didn't feel like a victor. The core arrived 3 days too late. Their flagship drifted into orbit like a guest who missed the funeral. It wasn't a rescue operation. It was a cleanup, a damage control mission. They brought bureaucrats, cameras, and carefully worded statements. Suits and soldiers who stepped over rubble and bodies like they were stepping over rain puddles. They asked questions, tried to write reports, tried to understand how Dorian Station went from a trade hub to a war zone in under 2 weeks. I didn't answer them. They didn't deserve answers. They didn't come when the first medic died. They didn't come when the first child went missing. They didn't come when we begged them to acknowledge the rule we carved in blood and fire. You don't hurt humans. They looked at the signs we painted on walls, the slogans we shouted in the halls, the memorials we welded from scrap metal and broken armor, and they asked why we didn't follow protocol. Protocol. That word tasted like ash now. We weren't heroes. We were just the ones who didn't die. Every sector we passed had a new name now. Sector A became Lyle's Watch. Sector H was renamed Ash Lane for the families burned in the bombings. Sector D was called No More Silence. We made plaques out of hull scrap. We turned fallen helmets into grave markers. We stitched banners that said, "Never again," and hung them from ceilings still half collapsed. The Revelik weren't coming back. Not here, not ever. We made sure of it. Some humans wanted justice, trials, tribunals, courtrooms. But that's not what we gave the Revelik prisoners. We gave them memories. We made them scrub the names of their victims into the floors of their own bunkhouses. Made them look at photos of the people they killed. Made them listen to the stories of survivors. The mother who carried her dead baby for 3 days. The teenager who had to torch a room full of bodies because no one else had the strength. Then we let them live, not because they deserved it, but because letting them walk through the world knowing they failed to erase us was a deeper punishment than any blade could deliver. They were sent off-world, stripped of their ranks, their language banned on Dorian Station, exiled from trade routes, marked. The Corps didn't like it. We didn't care. The first child born after the war was named Faith. I held her once, tiny, wrinkled, screaming, but alive. And I cried. Not because I was sad, but because, for the first time in weeks, I remembered what it felt like to protect something instead of avenge it. They wanted me to leave. The Corps offered relocation, a clean slate, a quiet retirement on a Corps-certified planet with a fake name and a monthly stipend. Said I'd earned it. I told them to choke on it. My place was here, with the ashes, with the survivors, with the people who never got the option to run. Years passed. We rebuilt the station. By hand. No contractors. No Corps funding. We wired lights from salvaged drones, recycled ship plating to patch walls, grew crops in rooms that once housed executions. We taught the kids to fight, to think, to remember. Not to hate, but to be ready. Because if there's one thing I've learned in all this, it's that peace is never permanent. There's always another empire, another enemy, another hand reaching toward a human throat thinking no one will stop it. But now they know better. Because we showed them what happens when you break the only rule that ever mattered. You don't hurt humans. Sometimes, at night, I still walk the old corridors, the ones no one uses anymore. They're quiet now. The lights flicker, the air hums, and the shadows still carry memories. But they don't scare me, because I know we earned this silence, with blood, with grit, with the kind of pain that doesn't fade. It brands itself into your soul. And every time I see a child laughing down one of those halls, I know it was worth it. Every bullet, every scar, every scream. And if they come again, whoever they are, however big their fleets or sharp their claws, they'll find we haven't forgotten. We don't forget the pain. We don't forget the dead. We don't forget the rule. Because it isn't just a warning. It's a promise. You don't hurt humans, or you'll wish you never knew what it means to try. I never planned to live this long. After everything, the war, the blood, the screams echoing through every corner of Dorian Station, I didn't expect to still be breathing a decade later. But here I am. Older, slower, still here, and still watching. They call it the fire line now. The corridor near Docking Bay Gamma, where we made our last stand. Where I burned the last Revelik banner and nailed a sheet of steel into the bulkhead with one sentence carved in broken, gouged letters. You don't hurt humans. People still stop there. New travelers, children born after the war. Some touch it like it's holy, some just stare. A few laugh. The young always do. They didn't live through it. They didn't carry bodies through corridors or wipe blood off children's faces. They didn't scream at walls when the medics said there was no one left to save. I don't blame them. Laughter's a kind of victory, even if it burns a little in the chest. Dorian Station is unrecognizable now. There are farms on Deck 4, real crops, soil imported from Luna Prime, tomatoes, rice, even chickens. We don't rely on ration packs anymore. There's a school in the old mess hall. The teacher's a woman who once stitched wounds during the firefights with kitchen thread. Now she teaches history, real history, not the sanitized core version where the Revelik were just misunderstood and humans were provoking instability. Our books don't soften the truth. They name every victim, every fighter, every betrayal. They remember. The station runs itself now. We have a council, not elected, not appointed, just people who were there, survivors, makers, people who earned the right to speak because they bled beside us. There's no currency, no military, just duty, and one rule printed above every exit hatch and inside every supply crate. You don't hurt humans. Not even once. Some visitors call us brutal. They whisper behind glass viewports about how we still train our kids to fight, even in peacetime, about how we keep the helmets of fallen enemies on display, cracked and rusted, lined up in silent rows in the memorial chamber. They say we're too intense, too cold, too dangerous, but they weren't here when the air tasted like death. They weren't here when the core let us rot. They didn't watch neighbors lynched in the dark. They didn't hold a mother's hand as she begged us to burn her dead child's body before the rats got to it. We remember, and that makes them uncomfortable. Good. Once a year, we hold the quiet walk. No speeches, no music, just every human on the station walking, barefoot, from Sector H to Sector D. It takes hours. We carry no weapons, no lights, just names. Each person wears a name around their neck. A name of someone who didn't survive. A name not in the core archives. A name that only exists because someone refused to let it vanish. We walk, we cry, we remember. And when we reach the end, we all place the names on the wall and whisper the promise again. Never again. It's not a prayer, it's a threat. I live near the old service deck now. Small quarters, quiet, clean. There's a rusted wrench above my bed, same one I used the day I stopped those Revelik thugs from beating that kid. It's bent now, useless. But I kept it, a reminder. Sometimes the strongest weapon is the first one you reach for when no one else will move. That kid? He's grown now. Taller than me. Runs the security protocols on the outer airlocks. Still calls me old man. Still visits once a week with a bottle of synthetic whiskey and too many questions. He thinks I'm full of wisdom. I'm not. I just remember what silence costs. I don't sleep much. Some nights, the screams come back. The station groans the way it used to during bombardments. My hands twitch, reaching for a rifle I haven't held in years. But when I open the door now, it's different. It's just wind through the recycled vents. Just silence. Peace. And I breathe again. Because I know why it's quiet. Because I know what it took. One time, a core ambassador came. Suit, polished shoes, security detail, and all the usual fake smiles. He wanted to discuss reconciliation. Wanted to begin the healing process. Said the core was ready to re-establish diplomacy with Dorian Station. I let him talk. Then I walked him down to the old furnace level, where we used to cremate the unidentifiable bodies, where the soot still stains the walls no matter how much we scrub. He stopped talking around then. Just looked at the black, at the names burned into the tiles. I told him, we already healed ourselves. Without you. He left the next day, didn't return. No one from the core has since. We prefer it that way. Now and then, someone still breaks the rule. A trader shoves a human kid in a line. A tourist spits on a plaque. A drunk outsider thinks we're soft now. We don't use trials. We don't use jails. We use airlocks. They learn. But this isn't a story about vengeance. Not anymore. It's a story about memory, about survival, about how a species that was once called fragile, primitive, emotional, undisciplined, became the nightmare that taught the galaxy a lesson it will never forget. We may love slower. We may trust easier. We may forgive longer. But hurt one of ours? Just one? And we will bring the stars down on your head. I'll die soon. I know it. Not in battle, not in fire. Just an old man with too many scars and too many ghosts. And that's fine. Because I'll die in a place we built with blood and bones and willpower. And when I go, I know they'll say the words again. Just like I did 1,000 times. Just like we all did, when there was nothing else left to hold on to. Just one rule. One truth! One eternal warning carved in fire and grit. You don't hurt humans.